The reason I'm excited about the 18859A brushless edition is because it's brushless. So the old version I had, and I was trying to convert it to brushless, but I had issues finding a pinion gear that would work with the brushless motor that I ended up trying to use. So the conversion didn't really work, didn't last long. It ran, but the plastic pinion gear got stripped out. And so I was looking for a metal one, wasn't able to find it. And so when this model came out where it's brushless out of the box, where no modification is needed, it got me pretty excited. So we're gonna take a look inside and see the differences between the old version and this new latest version. But before we do that, let's take a look at the size difference. So this is a 1/18 scale, this is 1/16, and here we have 1/10. So just to give you an idea of the size. So the great thing that I like about the 1/18 scale cars is because you can just put this in the backpack and it's pretty stealthy. So when you're carrying around this big old guy, you're not gonna be able to hide that very well. Not that you necessarily need to, but if you're going out on an outing, you're going on a picnic, or you're playing baseball with your kids or something like that, lugging this around or even driving it around may take, too many hands, too many bags. Whereas this guy, you can just, even your kid can hold it, or you can put in your backpack again, and it's ready to go. Off the bat, we're used to Haiboxing's inclusion of these clips with the plastic tab. This just makes it so that when you're pulling these off, it's a lot easier, and it's less difficult on your thumbs. Sometimes it gets kind of hard when you're pulling the clips without these plastic things. You probably will lose these eventually, and Haiboxing knows that, so they include an extra set. So there's actually 8 of these. So with this model, Haiboxing does include 2 of these batteries. We have the suspension. So this is aftermarket suspension. Well, normally it would be aftermarket, but they included it stock in this vehicle. So these are oil-based suspension components. They're not the friction shocks from the more tour grade versions. So this is good that they included that. Suspension works pretty well, look at that. Another thing I like about Haiboxing, especially with this particular car, is that on the Facebook groups, Haiboxing asked owners of existing Haiboxing cars what they would like to see in the latest 1/18 scale version. And so a lot of people requested all these things. So they wanted aftermarket, or they wanted upgraded shocks or suspension. So Haiboxing included that. And then they also requested more bodies. So the car comes with the purple version, but it also comes with this out of the box. So you don't need to buy this separately. This is good for just if you like a different style or different color, or if you damage the first one, you have a new one ready to go without having to buy anything extra or waiting for deliveries to come. Another thing that Haiboxing did for us is that they used a 3-wire servo. Why this is important is if you want to use your own transmitter, you're going to need your own receiver, and to get your own receiver, you're going to need a new ESC. So if you're going to replace that, then you can reuse the existing servo since it's 3-wire compatible. If you had an aftermarket one and this car did not have a 3-wire servo wire, then it would be 5-wire and you have to change out the servo, and that's just kind of a pain. So right now, if you're going to use your own transmitter, you're going to need your transmitter, you're going to need a receiver, and then an ESC. And then you don't have to replace this. Looking here in the front, we see they have metal CVDs. That's this component right here. And not only in the front, but also in the back. We have CVDs, metal CVDs in the front and back, which is an upgrade from most budget vehicles, which generally are going to be plastic. So even the higher priced 1/16 scale 16889, the front, as you can see, is plastic. The rear, I upgraded myself with metal CVDs right there. But out of the box, this guy comes with metal all around, which is just great. Even though I'll probably end up bashing this enough to break the lights, the fact that HBX includes lights at all is pretty cool. They're paying attention to detail and just giving us that extra benefit of having lights on the car. So it'll look pretty cool when we turn this thing on. But a lot of cars they don't have lights, they don't feel it's necessary, and they leave them out. But Haiboxing does include that. One thing to note is the way the wheels are attached. They use these hex nuts, which is a good thing. So normally we would think that all wheels are attached with hex nuts, but that's not true. So the 16889, the larger vehicle, comes with these Phillips head screws, which don't secure nearly as well, and they just aren't as good. So it's nice, again, that the 18895, they've included the hex nuts all around stock. When I first picked this up, I felt it was quite heavy, which is a good thing. It's got some heft to it. And so I'm looking at the components and I'm like, this isn't much different other than the shocks and the CVDs, and they're a little bit heavier, but why is the whole thing heavier? And so I'm looking closely and I see the center drive shaft right here is metal. Okay, the center drive shaft is metal. I don't know if the insides, the diff is metal. I suspect they're still plastic. I can't imagine they would have upgraded to metal diffs and not shown it off in their marketing campaigns and advertising and stuff like that. So I assume they're still plastic, which is totally fine for a 2S build. When I had this as a 3S, I converted this to 3S. Basically, the diffs all no longer worked. They just got stripped out. And so I replaced it with metal, but some of I didn't do a good job with it, and this thing no longer runs. So this thing is pretty much gonna be out of inventory, and we're gonna concentrate on this guy. And so we're gonna keep this as 2S. We're not gonna upgrade this and go crazy because I really adore this and I don't think I'm gonna be wanting to break this anytime soon. Although Haiboxing executed it pretty well, the reason why this body looks familiar is because this is very similar to the Arma Vortex body. And the reason why this body looks familiar is because it looks very similar to the Traxxas Max. So Haiboxing is not so great about using their own designs, but I guess you could say they got inspiration from other brands, but the execution did work out well. I mean, I really like the way this body looks, even without the decals. This ESC, which is a pretty basic ESC, comes with these bullet connectors off the motor. So why is that so amusing? Why it's amusing is because the older HBX models had the motors come off another type of cable. It was basically a single PH cable that would go into the ESC that looks similar like this white one, which is not necessarily standard. So it's good that they have this, because when we swap this over to a new ESC, if we decide to do that to get a new receiver and my own transmitter, then I can just leave the motor in place, not mess with anything, and just literally plug this into the new AC and then double stick tape it to the chassis. So I'm saying all these great things about the 1A59, 18895. And so what is the reason you would not get this? The reason you would not get this has to do with the scale. If you're looking for an 18 scale, this is the one. It has all those upgrades as I talked about. But if you are not looking for a 1/18 scale, then you're gonna wanna look further, because the drawback of 1/18 scale is that the size doesn't go over grass nearly as well as something of a larger scale. Even a 1/18 scale has trouble going along tall grass without really using up a lot of the battery. So if you do plan to be driving on tall grass, you're not gonna want a 1/18 scale at all. But for gravel and for mulch or for on-road, this 1/18 scale is great. And again, fits in your pocket, not in your pocket, it fits in your bag really easily. And you know, kids can hold this and it's no big deal, right? Whereas something with that's much larger is gonna be more of a pain to carry around. One thing I'm noticing here is that there's not a lot of play in here, which is great. There's not a lot of wobble in the wheels. Sometimes you're moving the wheels and there's a lot of play, which means that when you're controlling this on the ground, you're not gonna get as good of a response. So it's nice there's no play in this. It's much better put together than their 1/16 scale. This car, the 16889, I adore. And as a stock car, I would still adore, but Haiboxing has gone pretty above and beyond as far as the build quality of their 1/18 scale. So eventually they may have something, actually they already do. There's a pro version of this that does have metal diffs and upgraded suspension and all that. So that you may want to look at if you're looking for that size vehicle. This size vehicle I do think is a good all around. But if you're looking for something ultra small, even though the difference in physical size is not that extreme, I would still go for this guy. And so I had the old version, the mid version, and now the newest version, and they keep getting better and better. Let's talk a little bit about brushed versus brushless. So you hear all about how brushless is better, brushless is better, and spend the extra money. And that is true. So the reason why the brushless is better is because not only is it more efficient, but because of the efficiency, you have longer run times. And because of the way the technology of a brushless motor works, compared to a brushed motor, there's no friction in the motor itself. So that means there's a lot less wear, which means the brushless motor technically will last forever unless you're running way too many volts over it, you're upgrading or putting too big of a battery in there and you're frying it. But generally, if you're gonna fry any component, it's gonna be the ESC, which will get damaged before the motor. So a brushless motor is gonna be the better bet, and in most situations, I would say that it's worth the extra money. So it was a bit of a surprise to me that when I turned this on, it was super slow. And the reason why is there is actually a feature on this transmitter that allows you to change the speed. So if your kids are using it or you're new to it, you can set the speed to be low and you can set it to be high for more thrilling and experienced drivers. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so much torque that this thing can actually fall on itself. Wow. So I noticed on more than one occasion the back left wheel is locked. See how they're all rotating except for the back left wheel. So not sure what is hung up on that. It seems like maybe, I'm guessing gravel is getting into there and preventing it from turning. This didn't happen on the grass, it would only happen on the gravel, so I assume that might have something to do with it. But it seems like it's always on the back side. I wasn't sure if it was the back left or the back right consistently. But that's happened at least 4 or 5 times. But going reverse and then coming back, it seems to resolve it, but I'd still like to know what the issue is. So running it fairly hard, we only got about 11.5 minutes, which is not very impressive at all. But I did run it pretty hard, and we went through gravel, full throttle a lot of the times, over grass, up hills, and things like that. I still would have expected about 15-ish minutes. We'll try the next battery and see how that goes. That's fine. Definitely not a scientific test, but this time we got 17.5 minutes. Mostly on grass, and towards the end was over gravel and up those hills. So I think it's fair to say that over normal driving, kind of on the heavier, leaning towards the heavier side, we should probably get about 14-15 minutes. If you really want to run a bigger battery, it's probably not going to fit in this compartment right here. So you just have to stack it here and then put a Velcro strap and strap it on top. And then it'll have plenty of space to fit under the body, and then you'll get more range on that. This is going to be the steering dual rate. What that does is adjusts the maximum amount that the wheels will turn. So if you're finding that's turning too tight, you're going to turn that down. And if you don't think it's tight enough, then you're going to turn it a little bit more. Steering trim speaks for itself. Basically, out of the box, if the vehicle is veering to the right, like mine did slightly, then you're going to turn this slightly to the left. The dial is pretty sensitive, so you're just going to turn a little bit and then drive, turn a little bit until it goes straight. This transmitter, it's not very easy to do one-handed driving just because the reach on this dial is fairly far. So normally when I'm holding it, it's like this and I can't really reach it. So if I'm going to do one-handed, it faces me so I can kind of get a better grip and move my thumb more forward. It's not the most friendly for one-handed driving, but most people are only gonna do that if they're doing videos and things like that of this nature. That's how I did some of the footage for this particular car, but normally you're gonna be using two-handed, so that's not gonna be an issue. The bottom, it holds 3 AA batteries. I use rechargeable ones from Costco, and that's how I recommend for vehicles, just because you're gonna be using this fairly often. And so rather than kind of using disposable ones, I just use the rechargeable ones. And we can pop that open. These are actually the end loop ones that I use. Ooh, and it looked like I snapped something already. That's not good. So end loop, 3 AA's, and that's what gets us going. So the tab that broke with fairly normal handling was the tab that comes out of here that slips into there. So it was really brittle for some reason. This hasn't happened to any of my other 3 Haiboxing vehicles, but I guess that's just something to be aware of, but it's not a big deal. It doesn't really slide off on its own. You can always put a piece of tape there and keep that secure. Okay, it's been 5 months and I've had a chance to run through at least 50 batteries through this, and I can say it is very, very durable. So I went on a trip with some kids, some families, and 4 kids, probably 7 to 9 years old, ran this to the ground. So they're running through bushes, they were doing donuts, they were running it as hard as they could, and it survived. And my son even jumped on this. We were playing tag with the car. So basically I'm running the car around and trying to chase them, and then they run away from it. So my son was trying to jump up to avoid it, and then he landed on the shell. And the car was perfectly fine. The body just popped back up, and then it was like there was no issue. So this is the original body, and as you can see, there's no damage to it. I've liked this so much that I've had a few friends drive it who aren't necessarily into RC cars, who don't necessarily know how to manage and feather the throttle. So a lot of them will go hardcore and just go from 0 to 100% right away. And the drivetrain is still on its original. So it hasn't been damaged at all, and it still runs. So although I knew this was durable based on it being metal drivetrain, which it is, from the crown gear to the input gear to the center drive shaft and pinion and spur, I hadn't anticipated that it would be as durable as I've experienced. So I can say that this is an all-around great car for an 18 scale. If you're looking for an 18 scale car of good value, and since the first part of this video where this car was about 120-ish, the prices have dropped to 103, 110-ish, depending on the sale price or what's going on with Amazon. But you can get it with 2-day shipping from Haiboxing, and it comes with, again, upgraded shocks, comes with 2 body shells, comes with all the upgraded stuff on the inside, and metal CVDs. And so I don't know, I can't think of any reason or way that this could be beat as far as 18 scales are concerned. I also wanted to follow up on the issue with the rear back tire locking up. And it does still happen on occasion, but not nearly as much as it did originally. So I'm still not sure what's up with that, but maybe Haiboxing may want to take a look at why that's happening. I do really suspect that gravel's getting kicked up in somewhere underneath the back tire and is just getting it stuck. So, because when I run this on anything but gravel, we don't have that issue. And again, I just go in reverse and come back forward and it's fine. So it's not like I'm running this on competition where every second counts and it's a big deal. I mean, we're just bashing this around for fun. So if it locks up for a moment, and it's not that often, then I think it's not that big of an issue. But it is something that probably Haiboxing wants to take a look at as far as their design, because I haven't experienced that issue with any of their other models. Okay, one flaw with the car has to do with, and this is like really nitpicking, has to do with how the wire is connected to the headlights. And so you can see it's connected right where the bottom of the body touches the bumper. And so what happens is when the car is bumping along, then the bottom of the body actually cuts into or pushes pressure onto the connection where the wires are connected to the LED, and it bends it or breaks it. So right now, only one LED is functioning. And again, I mean, the fact that this car comes with LED lights out of the box is already great. So if one of them goes out, I guess it's not that big of a deal. But if you were to get this and it's really important to you, then I would probably try to reinforce the connection between the LED light and the wire, or you can buy a backup. And I think the lights cost like $4 or something, maybe $6 from AliExpress. So it's not going to be an expensive fix. And again, it's just something you want to pay attention to. Okay, this car solves the biggest problem that us dads have with purchasing our first RC vehicle. And that's that we don't want to buy something that's so baby and so entry level for our kid that we can't enjoy it ourselves. And we don't want to buy something that's so advanced that our kid can't enjoy it, right? So the dial on that transmitter solves that problem big time. And so a lot of the people that I know that have this car bought this as their first car for that reason. And I highly recommend it. I do recommend this car for literally all ages. And I don't say that lightly. And the reason why is because the transmitter that they're using for this 18 scale car has been upgraded. They're actually using the transmitter that was previously offered for the 16 scale car and offering for this smaller one. And the difference is that the previous transmitter had a switch where you can switch it from normal to high speed. This time, the transmitter that comes with it has a dial. So you can actually dial it literally as slow as you want, or as fast as you want. So literally a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old can drive this responsibly if you set the dial to their driving skill level. And if you have higher driving skill levels, or you're an adult and you're used to this kind of stuff, or just want the thrill, you can raise it to the top speed. And this thing flies on top speed. And so there's no disappointment as far as speed. And then the fact that it can adjust all the way down is a benefit that outweighs anything else. I think that's the number one selling point for a vehicle that is being shared amongst different skilled drivers. If you can't tell already, I do really speak highly of this vehicle. And 3 of my friends and a family member actually bought this car based on my recommendation. My cousin Randy has this, my friend Alex has this, Jeremy, and also Neil. And so if you're watching, hello. And hope you enjoy your car, and we'll be racing soon. All right, catch you later. Bye-bye.